Yeah, coming from the black community, Gerbert Johnson. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I gave a hickey to a gamer girl, I'm the Markiplier. Every single day I live up to my heart's desires. I was born on 9/11, I could still see the sparks and fires. You got some money, financed cars and bought designer. I got some money, saved it up for harder times. We are not the same, I'm eating chicken wings, about to fly a plane into the Empire State Building. I'm taking all the children. Gerbert.
Y'all really not messing with me on this rap shit, bro.
So you're in for a good, 20 minutes of yapping. That's what I do on this channel, so get ready, baby. I just gotta, sometimes daddy just gotta get something off his chest, you feel me? And hopefully people can relate to it or whatever. Growing up, entering your late teens, early 20s, starting to pay taxes, starting to, get insurance, do adult shit. It's always been a stressful time, right? It's always, it can feel like things are collapsing on you, like everything's very important, like you have no time. And I'm sure this is a timeless, universal feeling, but right now I find it kind of hard to discern what things I'm feeling that are timeless and what are time specific, because I've just been getting this feeling like the window of social mobility in this country, and I suppose in the Western world as a whole, the window to actually own things, create long-lasting stability in your life is just closing rapidly. It seems like older people, from the perspective of older people, it's very easy to look down at this generation and say, they're quite lazy, they're entitled. I don't blame them for this opinion. We all are a product of our circumstance, but contrary to popular belief, this generation goes to college more, graduates more, and works more. They're more likely to be full-time employed than previous generations. So in light of this criticism of younger people from our elders doesn't really hold up. And in spite of this, there's still this idea of young people not being able to grow up, of them failing to launch. Because what are the metrics of adulthood? Well, it's complete financial independence from your parents, which less than half of people under 30 say they have. It's owning a house. It's starting a family. It's general stability. Because youth is all about kind of figuring things out, exploring. It's a bit more chaotic. Whereas adulthood, you reach this routine, you reach this schedule, you build these foundations that you live off of for the rest of your life. And it seems like in light of recent changes, younger generations can be kind of indefinitely stuck in a childish phase, at least according to our standards. So the problem is, I've been convinced that most people don't understand, especially older people, because of what they grew up with, the actual difference in purchasing power between then and now. So there's inflation, and inflation, it's kind of a corny thing, the inflation, but at a certain point it's not even like a casual, cutesy little thing to talk about anymore. It gets pretty fucking real. Groceries and food, that's one thing. Groceries can cost more or less depending on where you are anyways. it's very, the groceries and food thing can be eye-opening because you can compare receipts from like, you know, it's very in your face because you buy these things so often. But if it was just that, that's not a big deal. Wages increase, inflation also increases. They're not equal. Many people find the official inflation rate to be questionable, but even then, the way it's measured is kind of tricky because it's year over year. So the last 3 years, I don't know the exact numbers. It was something like 8%, 9%. Now it's back down to a more normal 3%, 2 or 3%. The average is, like 3.5% per year. But you see, the 3% increase compounds on top of all the other increases. So the actual dollar amounts you're paying, they steadily rise despite the inflation dropping. And wages can't really keep up. Now, if it was just commodities, that's one thing. When you start getting into cars, when you start getting into insurance, when you start getting into especially housing and rents, this is where things are completely different today. I would argue it's not even comparable what young people are facing and what people even 20 years ago were facing. People are like, oh, that's why I'm voting red. Well, maybe you could argue it would get marginally better depending on who's in office, but the fundamental problem is, of course, that our entire monetary system is fiat and debt-based, and this allows for some real fuckery to occur. But first of all, when it comes to housing, the inflation is going to matter a lot more. Of course, when you apply it to the level of hundreds of thousands of dollars. Secondly, there's the actual market, the real estate market, which, because people aren't forming families and because of immigration, can get a little saturated. And finally, the real killer, the real messed up part about the housing market is, of course, investors. And when I say investors, I'm not really talking about like normal, wealthy people who are able to buy a couple rental properties. There are some of them. What I'm really talking about are massive corporations, asset management companies, they're called. I'm sure you've heard of them. BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard. They're the largest ones. They're all really one thing if you look into how they're all shared. The final quarter, the fourth quarter of last year, 2023, 26% of affordable houses were purchased by investors. This is from Redfin. This was a story on a lot of different sources. So you can look those numbers up. That's a record high. That's never happened before. Now, it's at this point where when you begin to understand it's a different planet. Older people looking down at younger people, why aren't they moving out? You have no fucking idea what's going on here. This is like dystopian shit. These investment homes are a lot of time empty. They're vacant. Keep in mind, this doesn't just impact the housing market or people looking to buy, but also people looking to rent or live in, people looking to move out anywhere that's not with their parents or relatives rent-free. And you could easily see how this messes the market up for regular people, especially young people who never got any time to build momentum. This is how I'm feeling now as a young person. It's like this massive monopolization almost, just these AMCs coming in and sweeping, buying everything up. In very particularly suspiciously opportune moments. This wasn't around really in my parents' time. The BlackRock and these kind of things started in the 80s, but they really started making moves after '08, the subprime mortgage crisis, and they struck hard again post-COVID. Now we're really seeing it. This didn't exist. This didn't exist in the 70s. I know there were some other problems, but the way I see it, and you could tell me if I'm wrong, if you just, as a boomer, if you just went to college, and especially if you were even remotely strategic about the degree you chose, and you got a job, you could put it down on a house with low interest rates. It's a real skill issue if you fucked it up back then. Now it's like the cards are stacked against you to a crazy degree. You do the math, you graduate college, you make about 26 an hour, you live in a normal American city, you add together rent, insurance, transportation, groceries. It doesn't even make sense how it works. So most people are living paycheck to paycheck. Most people are getting in debt. Even with roommates, it gets precarious. So it's pretty jacked up. And this massive monopolization of the houses, these people able to get the funding required, able to do all of this. This kind of thing is not possible without strategic use of debt and without fiat. Don't get it twisted. When we talk about young people not being able to afford houses, and this stuff is basic, but it's a little bit novel to someone like me, a young person just starting to realize the steps and everything. Nobody's just buying houses. Even boomers, for the most part, didn't do it. Young people not being able to buy houses means they're not able to afford the down payment and the other qualifications to get a loan from the bank to enter into a 30-year mortgage contract, wherein you pay. It depends, but it's usually 1/5. It's usually less than 1/5 of the price of the home in order to get this contract. And then you pay 30 years worth of compound interest to the bank. And the way this was launched, the 30-year mortgage, is also very suspicious, very not good. And the way it's become like normal and institutional, it's loan sharking, but it's just a part of that. That's our system is debt based. It's still a better idea than renting, which is basically, well, it depends on the interest rate whether it's a better idea than renting. Interest rates are higher than they've ever been. So, and also when the Fed wants to reel in inflation, the interest rates rise. So it's a lose-lose situation. For young people now in this system. What was I just talking about? It's still a better idea than renting, which is basically just paying someone else's debt if you can enter a 30-year mortgage. But yeah. And there's also a real shortage of what's called starter homes, just like quaint little houses that young people can buy and start it, and they haven't been built for like 20 years. So you look at it and old people might have points. Young people are addicted to media. Some of them can seem quite entitled. Maybe they're ordering DoorDash too much, whatever. And granted, the increased participation in working is driven a lot by young women. So there's a contingent of young men that are kind of just dropping out. It's not a huge thing, but it's statistically significant, I guess you could say. But when you really look into what's going on and the mechanisms of debt, it's very easy to get demoralized. I could see how you could just come to the conclusion, well, you know, I'm with my parents, I'm just going to chill, I'm going to play Elden Ring, who cares? I'm not doing that, but I could very easily see how you could come to that conclusion. And I don't know if I'm just feeling this, if I'm just making stuff up, if it's just a part of what it's like to be this age, starting to transition to adulthood. But I really, I feel like it's all closing in, you know. I hear stories of older people like, I didn't know what I was doing in my 20s. I kind of stumbled through, and by the time I was 30, I figured it out, and I got a good career, and I finally have a house now. I don't know if young people today are going to have that same option. Record high interest rates, record high amounts of massive corporations purchasing all the property, inflation compounding and compounding, and the wages increase depending on what sector you're in, but no matter what, they're not keeping up. Few young people are able to shield themselves from this reality. If you have rich parents, which that's going away. There's like a whole boomer retirement crisis. At a certain point, the kids have to support the parents. There's some young people, some paths you could take at a bachelor level that will get you six figures or close to six figures. You could work your way up. The tech, the finance, these are also kind of going away. There's a whole AI thing, but a lot of these are just jobs just got laid off. There's elite overproduction. All these people are getting these degrees, so it's becoming saturated, etc. And third, there are some young people who found a way to make money online. A lot of these things are just like pseudo scams or scams, though. It's like reposting slop content or some horse shit like drop shipping or actual scams, marketing tactics for high ticket sales, like shit like that. It's annoying. All of it's annoying. But it's there. So I don't know. It's just easy to get blackpilled. I don't know how I'm going to be able to afford a home. If you're just going to rent forever, you have no way of really building wealth. And make no mistake, it's ultimately because of debt-based fiat. When they give you this loan in which you pay 30 years of compound interest, they don't go down into the vault and count little jewels. It just fucking bring comes out of nowhere. Then what you end up paying in interest can easily be like you're basically buying a whole nother house over those years. And they've never been higher, the rates. And also, if you go into the different contributors of BlackRock, the banks are all in there. It's like one big thing. It's one giant machine that you almost have to participate in. You have to get in debt to even play the game. They hold something like 90% of the S&P firms. So if you want to invest, if you want to get a Roth IRA, they contribute to a lot of the 401ks and companies. So it's just all there, and it's the same people buying. It's the same people you know. Maybe it's just maybe I'm just freaking out because that's what it's like to be a young man turning into adult. Maybe this is timeless. I don't know. I don't know if it's a drill, but it might not be. 26% might not be a drill. Banking dynasties may have monopolized money itself. Now, I'll end it with some white pills, I guess. The window's closing, it's still there. I mean, I don't know what it's like for people born after 2008. You're basically, I don't know what. Not everybody's going to start a business. Not everybody can just go online and make a bunch of money. These are all red pill like marketing tactics. Most people just have to work a job, and that job should be enough to buy a home. But it's not. And when that's not happening, you're basically, a slave is hyperbole. You're a serf. It's like serfdom. When you work to rent, but you don't actually own anything, that you're a peasant. Even a lot of medieval peasants owned land. You're like the lowest of what would be considered. You're a serf in a in a feudal system. The strategy should be different. The idea that people are going to have kids now and these kids are all going to get their careers and all go buy their house, that's done. For a lot of history and in other parts of the world, they have multi-generational households, and I think that's what should happen. A silver lining in some of this is that it might make people abandon their sort of rugged individualism. Families, close friends could combine resources in order to actually have something. So, there was one more thing. Give me a second. At this point, it's like, dude, why even contribute to a Roth IRA? What's anything going to be worth in 40 years when I'm able to withdraw from it? But I don't know. I guess that's the point. It works against the inflation. Yeah, you get the compound interest to work for you. But that's how these things are allowed to happen. Compound interest over time is extremely powerful. And if you're able to loan out this money without really having to give it out of your pocket, that's the whole mechanism. You go into the mechanisms of debt. It's like a whole, I don't say this literally, it's like black magic. It's like crazy how deep it goes. I guess another thing is perspective. It's easy to complain about things today. It's still one of the better times to be alive, for sure. You compare it to the 50s, 60s, up to the early 2010s. It's like, yeah. But before that, you have world wars, you have famines, you have the depressions, all of this. So, still a good time. And this is one of those things where, I really want to be proved wrong. So if anybody knows what I'm talking about, I've read books like Creature from Jekyll Island, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, things like this. I've also read rebuttals to them, debunks, second take on the Jacksonian Bank War, I think it's called. And I just find the debunks of these things to fall, regrettably, they fall short. They fall very short. this is one of those things where I really just want to be told I'm wrong about central banking and the Federal Reserve, because that's kind of like the real problem here in my eyes. So, but maybe I'm just an impressionable young man. I've fallen into the wrong pits. Maybe everything's fine, right? And I'm just a young guy. I get a little stressed because that's what the time is. I'm becoming an adult. But hey, I'd like to hear, I'd like to hear people's thoughts to educate me. Maybe if I'm dreadfully wrong, even if I'm wrong, I'm still. That's the good ending for me. So, please tell me. For the love of God, please tell me I'm wrong.